Partner or a valued community organization, we are glad that you are here. I'd like to start by taking a moment to recognize our commissioners. Mayor Birdsong, Mayor Pro Tem Yates, Commissioner Dantzler, Commissioner Dollison, Commissioner Mercer, and I know we have some other elected officials in the room this morning. Could you please stand now to be recognized? All right, to kick things off, I'd like to bring up Commissioner Dollison to do an invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, good morning. Praise the Lord, everybody. Good morning, Winter Haven. It's good to be here this morning. Last thing I did last night, I had a review for the city, but then I also had a prayer meeting. And so I'm still in prayer mode. But one thing I didn't do last night at the church, I didn't take up an offering. And I looked out in this crowd, and I thought to myself, this looks like a good offering crowd. Praise the Lord. We'll have ushers at the back when you leave. You can just leave your money. It'll be greatly appreciated. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we gather here today with gratitude in our hearts for this city, the beautiful community of Winter Haven, and the blessings we enjoy every day. We thank you for all of our residents, leaders, businesses, and all who contribute to the fabric of this community. As we discuss our city's vision, challenges, and successes, we seek your guidance and wisdom. May we be mindful of our responsibility to serve with integrity, compassion, and humility, so that all decisions honor your call to care for one another in the place we call home. Lord, we ask that you continue to bless this city, keep it in safe, prosperous, and united. May we strive together toward a brighter, sustainable future for all, celebrating our diversity, our resilience, and to make Winter Haven this wonderful and unique place that it is. And a blessing, oh God, we pray that the Holy Spirit will guide us and lead us in all truth. We bring glory and honor to your holy and righteous name. And all the people said, amen. God bless you. Please stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Haven Coffee, Richard's Fine Coffees, and Honeycomb Bread Bakers for the delicious coffees and pastries this morning. Today, you can expect an informative look into our city's growth, challenges, and strategic plans for the future. Remember, as you listen, feel free to submit any questions you have by scanning that QR code that's at your seat. These will guide our Q&A session later today. And now, to officially kick things off, please join me in welcoming Mayor Nathaniel J. Birdsong, Jr.
Good morning. Now, those of you that know me know that you put a mic in front of me, and the rest is history. I'll go on and on and on. But this morning, since we have a full day, I have a script, and I'm going to try to stick with it, but you know, that's hard for me. So, here we go. Good morning, everyone. You see, that's a script. Come on, good morning. Good morning. And welcome. I want to start by thanking each of you for taking the time to join us today. Whether you're here to stay informed, ask questions, or simply show your support, your engagement is what keeps our community moving forward. As we all know, Winter Haven is facing some significant challenges, and I want to touch on two key areas that will shape our future. First, water resources. As the chain of Lake City, we have a special responsibility to protect this finite resource. Our lakes are a defining feature of Winter Haven. Perhaps even more importantly, we all need water to live and thrive. I am proud to say our team is working day in and day out to ensure safe, sustainable water resources for our city. Secondly, let's talk about growth. It's not a dirty word. You get that? It's not a dirty word. It's something you see and feel every day. Winter Haven has grown faster than all of us could ever have imagined. Today, we're nearing a population of 60,000 people. That growth is exciting, but it also brings challenges to every service we provide. More people mean more waste to collect, more emergency calls to respond to, and a greater need for the community engagement. But with these challenges comes opportunities for innovations and improvement. Despite these hurdles, I'm more optimistic than ever about the future of our city. Over the past 2 years, we've been listening closely to you through surveys, community meetings, focus groups, and more. We take that feedback, gather the brightest minds in the city, and we've been hard at work creating a roadmap for the next 5 years, our newly adopted strategic plan. If I had to sum it up, the path forward in one word, it would be innovation. My fellow commissioners and I have already embraced new ideas and new technology, and the dedicated city staff are ready to execute on our new 5-year strategic plan. Together, we are not just responding to challenges, we are shaping the future and continue to enrich the lifestyle through exceptional services. With that, I'd like to turn things over to the city manager, T. Michael Stavros, who will take a deep dive into some of the specific steps we're taking to address these challenges and put our plan into action. Thank you, and we are truly grateful that you are here.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great opening comments, and thank you, Commissioner Dollison, for your invocation and leading us in the pledge. It's great to see so many people in this beautiful facility. I don't know if you've had a chance to come into this building since the city's acquired it, but we're extremely proud to have this within our inventory of assets. We're extremely proud of our relationship with Theater Winter Haven, and they have done a beautiful job. Wouldn't you agree? I think last night there was a magician on stage who sawed himself in half or something to that effect. I'm not going to do that today, but if there's any volunteers that would like us to try that with them, maybe we could. I do want to say that the proceeds from your ticket purchases today, all of the proceeds from that are going back into reinvestment back into this very facility. So thank you for being here and thank you for contributing to that. The mayor, he mentioned that word of growth, and you'd have to be completely unconscious to not understand that Winter Haven is a community is growing. But I also want to point out that we are not the only community that's growing. I often reference the state of Florida as having a beauty queen sash across it that goes from Volusia County and Daytona Beach all the way down through Sarasota that is just a belt of growth that is happening in our community. In Polk County alone, the estimate is that about 100 people move to Polk County every single day. 6 move to Winter Haven every single day. And that's been the case for the past several years. A lot of people say, well, can't you just stop that? Can't you just close the doors and say nobody else in? Not really. You know, there are entitlements and there are land rights that people have with their properties that we have to work with. And those are by state statute and by constitutional rights. So what our obligation is to make sure that that growth is planned and accommodated for in a way that allows them to do what it is that their desires and needs are, but also accommodates any mitigation efforts and any offsets or externalities that happen with the other properties around us. So I'd say, you know, that's a big challenge for us and something we strive for each and every day, but this community is going to continue to grow. The mayor mentioned we're about 60,000 people. So we get population estimates they come out usually in the late summer, but they date back to April of that year. Those are produced by the University of Florida, the Bureau of Economic and Business Research. We call it BEBR. You'll hear the BEBR number come up quite a bit. Our BEBR number for April of this past year, of 2024, was right around 58,000 people. So if you figure 6 people coming to our community each and every day, we are quickly approaching 60,000 people. And I would certainly expect that when we hit the April estimates for 2025, we will be at or above 60,000 people. You go back 24 years ago, around 2000, 2001, we were around 26,000 people. So we have more than doubled our population in that time frame. Polk County, you could say the exact same thing. Our service area that we accommodate, so this is people that are within our Winter Haven water system. These are people that have a Winter Haven address per se. They certainly utilize our roads, our parks, our libraries. They attend our special events. They rely upon our emergency response services for police and fire. That population is probably around 90,000 people. So, you know, that's the service area that we're working with. When we talk about how we're growing, we'll talk a little bit about mainly the housing side of it first here. So, this year, from October 1st of 2023 through September 30th of 2024, our fiscal year, we did about 786 single-family building permits. That's new construction on single-family homes. That is about the same as we've done the past several years. And you can see from the chart that's up behind me and on the screens, that blue line represents those single-family homes. That green bar represents multifamily units. So go back 2 years ago and we had a boom in multifamily. Why? Because there was really a deficit for multifamily housing in Winter Haven. The last large-scale project we had come on would have been the Carlton Arms project back in the early 2000s. We've had a couple things happen in between then, but in 2023 we saw a significant investment in multifamily. And collectively, those were about 1,200 to 1,300 individual units within those multifamily developments. And that was needed. That was driven by the market and the need within the community that we needed to have more options available. Not everybody wants to have a single-family home. Not everybody can afford a single-family home. Think back to when you were coming out of high school or coming out of college. Did you run out and buy a home right away? Did you know where you wanted to settle permanently? Most of you probably lived in a rental facility or an apartment or whatever that may have been at some point in your life. When you have people that are, you know, they don't want to necessarily be tied down by a home, they're looking for that multifamily option. So we saw a lot of growth in that area, and that kind of right-sized the inventory that we have. We also did this past year about 16 new construction permits tied to commercial development. So that doesn't sound like a lot. 16, that's not a really big number. That is new construction coming out of the ground. That is not the renovation of an existing building. That is not someone going in and starting a new business where a former business was. This is about new construction. And I'm going to get into some of those big projects here in just a second. When we look at how our permits divvy out percentage of total housing permits that we issue, you can see that blue line at the top, that is our single-family permits. And for years, we were at 80+, 90+% of our permit issuance was in just the single family. And you can see that green line at the bottom wasn't a whole lot of multifamily happening. 2023, you saw that reverse. There was this sudden pent-up demand for multifamily, and all the development happened with that, and now we're going back to right-sizing again. And that'll probably continue on. Maybe it'll balance out a little bit more in the next year or two, but what we expect is you're going to see, now that you have all those multifamily units have come online, single family will again take the greater percentage of what we're developing because we have the inventory within the multifamily. I mentioned commercial permits. So this slide shows you we did 16 multifamily permits last year. We had a pretty good spike in commercial permits. We had a pretty good spike the year before, a lot of development that happened there. But we're still trending towards the higher end of commercial development in terms of our permits being issued. And I can tell you, if you drive around town today, you can see where new development is happening, new things are coming out of the ground, and we're excited about that. That means that we're getting new business and new opportunities for our consumers here in our community that wasn't here before. We're also seeing people that are coming in and taking advantage of some of our vacant parcels that are out there. Some of the commercial development that's happened in the past year, go through a handful of these. So out on Cypress Gardens Boulevard, we worked with Advent Health and their development efforts. They just opened up their freestanding emergency department this past year. That is up and running. That is also the precursor to a new hospital that will serve Winter Haven. Advent Health will build a 192-bed hospital right next to that emergency department. So watch for that coming over the next year to 24 months, I would say. Florence Place, this is a true affordable housing project that just opened up this past year on 1st Street North in Florence Villa. This is 88 multifamily units that are affordable by federal standards. So this is a project that Blue Sky, it's a developer out of the St. Petersburg area, was able to secure federal tax credit financing to keep those rents as low as they could possibly be and in alignment with what the federal government and the Housing and Urban Development Department requires for affordable housing. So we're really excited about that, and that is the first of what I think is going to be 2 or 3 projects of that style that come online. Home to Suites, this is now opened up. This is the old Kmart shopping center that is out on Cypress Gardens Boulevard across from Legoland and that public shopping center plaza there, back behind Glory Days. So this is up and running. Kmart, of course, shut down many years ago. That property sat vacant, and now we have an additional hotel there. I have a couple hotel projects that have come online, about 3 within the last year alone. When Legoland came here, and I saw Kate and others from Legoland here this morning, I want to thank you for being here and being such a great partner to Winter Haven. When Legoland was coming, our biggest concern was, where are people going to stay? They certainly helped accommodate that need through what they developed on their property, but between Legoland and all the sports and tourism that we're doing, we have a need for hotel rooms, and we are filling those up frequently. Those are people that are coming to our community. They're bringing their money with them from out of this area, and they're leaving their money here. So we want more of that. That is, we consider that tourism to be an export. We're getting money that is not Winter Haven originated to come here and stay here in our system. The Bowen Yard, this is kind of a cool project. This is an old agriculture maintenance yard, kind of storage facility that was down off of Avenue C Southwest, the 610 Corporation. I know they're here as well this morning. Thank you for your investment in doing something very innovative and creative with this space. This now holds, I think, 5 different restaurants within, or food and beverage establishments in there. The Soci Market is there, a great common lawn area space that's kind of activated what I would call an outdoor food court for our community. This spec warehouse, I think I talked about last year, this is a 1.2 million square foot building that was built on spec out at the Industrial Logistics Park on the very south end of town. Trad Industries and their partners put this together. They are, as I understand it, evaluating and working with a couple different tenants to go in there. But these types of projects are very significant for us because these bring a tremendous amount of tax revenue to the city, but their dependency upon city services, as a single family would have, is completely different. I say this all the time. I don't have to build a park for them. I don't have to build a library. They don't require a lot of police and fire service. The road system coming out of the ILP is already there, so their demand on services is minimal, yet their contribution to the tax base is significant. The Jade, Anybody had a chance to go check out the Jade? This is one of the coolest, most innovative projects I've seen in any community. This is the old, I believe it was the Holiday Inn down on US 17, just right behind Manny's Chop House. This was a very underutilized and for the most part vacant hotel that sat there for years and years and years. And the developer came in and said, I want to convert those into multifamily units. So all of those hotel rooms were kind of combined, take 2 rooms, make them into 1 apartment, and that is now beginning to occupy. When that is all said and done, I think they'll have over 300 multifamily units within there. They're not affordable in the sense of the HUD definition, but they are at the very low end of the fair market rental rate within our community. A great project. If you get a chance to go by and check that out, please do. The Carlton on Lake Dexter, one of the largest multifamily housing projects we've done in a long time. This is, again, down off of Cypress Gardens Boulevard, 500 units in there, and I think 20 different buildings that they have on property. A beautiful property that has all been completed. They have all their certificates of occupancy, and they are filling that up. Think about that hospital I mentioned, 192-bed hospital that's going to develop, half a mile from here. When they start staffing that with nurses and doctors and the support staff for a hospital, those people need some place to live, and they're going to want something that's close by. This is the type of product that really speaks to that. Staybridge Suites, another one of those hotels, a great project in partnership with our CRA, right in the heart of downtown. From what I've been told, this is one of the highest performing hotels in the entire county. And that is driven by the events and activities we have in Winter Haven, the tourism that we bring in through the Advent Health Fieldhouse. So this is a great addition to Winter Haven, another beautiful property. They just opened up around Christmas time last year. So again, if you haven't been by, check them out. Harmony on Lake Eloise. This is a single-family housing project in an old grove area on the south side of town, down on the west side of Lake Eloise. When it is completely built out, it'll be about 1,200 to 1,300 new single-family homes. A lot of investment in infrastructure for transportation with this project as well. One of our first roundabouts in Winter Haven came about because of this project. They're completely realigning West Lake Eloise Drive. A good partnership project, and again, providing some pretty unique housing in there. The Pros at Cypress Point, another multifamily development out on Cypress Gardens Boulevard, just to the east of the Winterset condominium development. Again, meeting some of that need that we have within the multifamily inventory. The Breeze. So this is a project that's under construction right now. If you walk to the corner of Central Avenue and 3rd Street and look south, you're going to see it going up. This is a partnership project that 610 and other developers are doing. 102 units. It'll be very similar to the Rain Dance development that opened up about a year or so ago. Again, providing multifamily in downtown. Again, multifamily in downtown is special because, one, it supports the business community that's downtown, and most of the infrastructure that's needed to support those developments already exists. So there's not a demand on parking. They self-park on their own lots. We have a park system downtown. These are people that are looking to be in that urbanized area to avail themselves to places like the Ritz Theater, the restaurants, the retail downtown. So we're really excited about that coming on. The Waverly, this may be a project you're not as familiar with. This is another multifamily development that is at the corner of Cypress Gardens Boulevard and Cypress Gardens Road, Lake Ruby Drive area. This one also opened up this past year. So when you look at that Cypress Gardens corridor, where we know we're going to see a lot of growth over the next few years, the inventory of necessary housing is already in place there. So that's a tremendous benefit in spurring on more economic growth there. If I'm bringing a big business and I need places for my people to live, that's already going to be there. Lovebird. So, looks like we may have, there we go. So Lovebird, I don't know who's had a chance to go to Lovebird. Every time I go by there, I'm trying to figure out, are they giving away free lottery tickets or $100 bills or what? I live downtown. I live 2 blocks from this building. I have not had a chance to go there because I just don't have the patience to wait in line. It is definitely a long line inside the building, out the door, and on certain occasions I see it wrap all the way around the building. But I hear they have great fried chicken. So if that's on your diet today, go check them out. I'm sure. The Upper Crust Pizza, this is a cool project. This is high-end designer pizza in my estimation. I'm not real happy with this project. I'm going to tell you why. It is right across the street from City Hall. So for me and my staff that are trying to be a little healthier, this is temptation every time you walk out the front door. But this is an older retail establishment downtown that was converted to a new food and beverage, and Brett and Ashley Hill have done a great job with this. And again, great place that we see a lot of activity, people making that a destination for their food and beverage needs. So those are just some of the projects that we have going on that happened this past year. But if you look ahead, I mentioned that hospital. You have a Sonny's Barbecue that's getting ready to open up in a former vacant property. I'll tell you, Bruce Lyon here somewhere, because I'm going to steal his line. There's a whole lot going on, but I can't tell you anything about it. I will say this. If you're into some of our more prominent grocery stores, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of efforts in new development tied to them. So you're going to see some new grocery stores coming into our area in places that meet the demand of where our residents are. Those of you that have been banging on our doors for years and years about particular big box retailers that you'd like to see in Winter Haven, I have a good feeling that that's going to happen sometime in the not too distant future. Everything going, that we don't get to control that, but the indications are that we're likely to see a new big box retailer coming into Winter Haven that will satisfy, maybe take some of those knocks away from my door. But very exciting about what's happening there. The mayor mentioned strategic planning. And last year, if you were with us, I shared with you where we were in that process. We were toddlers at that point. We were about 8 or 9 months into the process, and we have come so much farther from that to where we are today. So our strategic plan is built around these 6 pillars that you see behind me. So community safety, quality of life, infrastructure, economic sustainability, environmental stewardship, and responsible government. These are things that are so critical to what we do. Everything we do fits within one of those categories, if not multiple. If it doesn't touch that in some way, we probably shouldn't be doing it. But at the end of the day, if I talk to you about all the different departments and services we have, that's bureaucratic mumbo jumbo. It doesn't make a lot of sense to people. But when we talk about quality of life, you can relate. When we talk about community safety, you can relate. So we're trying to do a better job of really harnessing our services into those categories and to deliver our messaging on what we're doing that aligns with this. So how do we get through strategic planning? So it all starts back in really in December of 2022, almost 2 years ago now. When I first became city manager, I sat down with key members of my leadership team and said, this is what we need. We need a path to help guide us every day. We don't need to be guessing at what needs to be done. We don't need to be throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. We need to have an intentional plan. Now, the city commission, long before this one, they always did strategic planning, but it was more focused on what are our priority projects? What is the issue at hand today that we need to react to and come up with a strategy to deal with it? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's an important thing. We do that really every day in City Hall. The strategic planning that I was focusing on was more of traditional strategic planning that you would see in large businesses and corporations of where are we trying to get to in 5 years? What are the key things that we need to get us there, and what does that look like? So from that point forward, our Public Affairs and Communications Department began facilitating some focus groups. We met with members of the business community, the nonprofits, city staff, community partners. We called upon youth within our community, and we asked them, help us define what these pillars are. What is it that we do, and what resonates with you? And that's how that came to be. We then started asking the question of, well, how good are we doing in these areas? So if you own a business, you probably do some surveying. You probably, after you finish a construction project, or you serve a meal, or whatever your service is, you probably reach out to your customers and say, how did we do? Government doesn't do a good job of that. So in March of that year, we began putting together community surveying, and we have launched that now. So we've watched it 3 times. We'll do a 4th one in December. This is an online surveying process that we use. We ask very specific questions that help us understand how satisfied are our residents with the services we're providing in those 6 pillars. We want to know where we're falling short in response to your expectations for your community. We then went forward and we said, okay, we've got this information. We need to make sure our decision-making aligns with that. So in our budget process, we started building metrics, saying your budget is a numerical summary of what your organization's priorities are. Okay? So if our priorities are in these 6 areas, we need to be measuring how are we investing into that. So we built metrics into our budget process. We continue forward. We get into January-ish time of this year that we're in, 2024. We reached out to 150 different individuals in different segments. We couldn't interview all 60,000 people in Winter Haven. We needed to do some sampling. But we reached out to 150 different individuals and asked them, what do you see as the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges for Winter Haven today and over the next 5 years? We needed to get that feedback. We also asked them, what are those same strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges that you see in your industry? Now, why is that important? First of all, we're not in the medical profession. Now, we're going to give you emergency life support services through our ALS and fire services and our police department. But we don't run hospitals, we don't run clinics, but it's imperative that we understand what are the challenges that the healthcare industry is going to face. If the healthcare industry is telling me that we need 3,000 new employees in Polk County today, well, how does that impact us? That goes back to that issue of housing. That goes back to the issues of transportation, and we need to be planning for that. We don't build schools. But we need to know from Polk State College and our local schools and Fred Hyde, our superintendent, and others, what's happening with the school system? What are your challenges, and how do we interplay with that so that we can be responsive to it? So we took all that information, called it all together, brought the City Commission together in March of 2024 for 2 days, and we did a full-on strategic planning session. We presented all of that environmental scan information, we provided survey data, we provided updates on our metrics, and we put it upon the Fab Five down here, and they do a great job. I'm very excited to work for these 5 individuals because I've never seen a commission that works quite as cohesively and professionally together. They agree to disagree when they need to, but they're all working towards a common goal, and that is to make your community the best that it can be. We asked them to help identify what are the goals. When you look at Winter Haven 5 years ahead from now, you talk about environmental stewardship, what do you see? They developed 25 unique goals surrounding these 6 pillars. The day after that concluded, I brought together members of our leadership team internally and said, okay, these are the commission's goals. How do we accomplish it? And from early April until the end of June, that group worked to identify pathways to accomplish those goals and came up with 116 action strategies. So in summary, you have 6 pillars. Well, let's go back even further. You have one community. And we are just one community. I don't care where you live. If you're in Southeast, Northwest, if you're in Florenceville or downtown, we are one community called Winter Haven. From there, you have 6 pillars that define the services we provide. Within those 6 pillars, you have 25 goals, and within those 25 goals, you have 116 action strategies. We pulled all that together. We built a 164-page document. It's a great read if you're interested in this kind of stuff. If you're not interested in it and you have trouble sleeping, we'll get you a copy. We presented that City Commission in July of 2024, and by resolution, they unanimously adopted the City of Winter Haven's first ever 5-year strategic plan. I tell people all the time, I've been with the City of Winter Haven for 23 years and 2 days as of today. I've been in local government for 35 years. This is probably the proudest thing that I have ever had a chance to work on with a community that's dedicated to charting their own path for what their future looks like. We take that document, we created an employee version of it. We can't have what we call SPOTS. SPOTS is an acronym that means strategic plan on top shelf. Okay, you can't build this thing and then put it away and say, oh, it's up there, we got one. We have to live it. It has to be ingrained into our very fabric. So over the past 2 months, I've met with every city employee, group meetings, and gone through this entire plan with them so they know this is what they're doing and why it's important and how they fit into it. We then created a citizen version of it. I'm happy to say that you each have a copy of that citizen version at your desk today. It's probably about 20 pages maybe, a very culled down, summarized version of it. We are giving this to anybody and everybody. When we do our programs, when we meet with our advisory committees, our nonprofit groups, when we go out and talk with the community, we take a case of these and we give them out. Why? Because we want you to hold us accountable. This is our contract. This is the City Commission's contract and commitment to the citizens of what we are focused on. Every month before our City Commission at an agenda review, and I know we just did this last night, we had a couple citizens that were there, you got to see this firsthand, we give them an update on a single strategic pillar and some cool things that we're doing. Last night was about community safety. They got to see how we're using virtual reality to train our police officers. They got to see new technology and how we use less lethal tools that we have, our TASER system. They got updates on what we're doing for our water system safety, the water you drink. They got updates on what we're doing with cybersecurity. So this is ingrained in everything that we're doing each and every day. If you walk into one of my department directors' offices and that book is not sitting on their desk and it's not frayed and tabbed and written in, call me. I may have an opportunity for you to join our team. But that's the marching orders. This is your guide. Let's use it. The commission will come back together in probably March or April of 2025. We'll revisit everything. We won't rewrite it, but we'll revisit and we'll give updates and we'll talk about things in the environment that have changed that may influence the prioritization of some of those strategies. So again, very exciting what we're doing within Strategic Plan. I hope you'll take time to read through that. There's some very cool stuff in there. One of the things that we want to do, and we're actually doing it today with you, is they have an action strategy to get out into the community and talk to our residents even more than we already are. So we are going to be scheduling, I'm not going to call them town halls, but they're kind of meet and greets and information gathering sessions for us to come into your communities and share what we're doing and hear what your needs are beyond what's already in there. So if you're interested in having us come out to your community or your neck of the woods, reach out to myself or MJ Carnevale, our Deputy City Manager, Assistant City Manager Charlie Bird, or Katrina Hill, and we will get you on that schedule. Lots of good things happening there. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to talk about these 6 strategic pillars. MJ is going to help me with a couple of these, and we're going to go through some of the things that we're doing that speak to these areas. So economic sustainability. This is a big one. You know, inflation is on the tip of a lot of people's tongues. You know, what the cost of fuel is, the cost of groceries, the cost of living, all those different pieces come into play there. And how are we growing as a community? So when we talk about economic sustainability, this is about fostering innovation to ensure enduring success in our community. So this is finding new solutions, improving efficiency, effectiveness, and quality, strengthening the job market and the workforce, the diversity of local economy. Now, when I say diversity of local economy, we're not just talking about, you know, who owns the business. Is it a minority-owned business or a women business enterprise or a disadvantaged business enterprise? This is about all of that. It's about diversity and what's available. Can I stay in Winter Haven and get all the services I need, whether that's in education or in healthcare or in retail or whatever I'm looking for? We have to have a good variety, a diverse variety of what's available. It's also about the diversity of where things exist. So if all of your medical is in the heart of downtown Winter Haven, guess what happens to your roadway system? Everybody's trying to get to downtown Winter Haven for medical services. One of the great things about that Advent Health Hospital opening up is that puts a whole nother set of medical out in an area that allows people to travel less to get that, and it expands the market. So that's what we're talking about with diversity. We want to support small and local business and talk a little bit about that. I mentioned housing diversity, and then also the efficient utilization of our land and natural resources as it plays into economic development. City of Winter Haven for, I'm going to say, well over 50 years, probably 60, maybe even 70 years, has had a grant and aid program. We formalized this a little more about 5 years ago, and this is our effort to support nonprofits in our community. From my perspective, we don't have to do everything, and we can't do everything. but we do have an obligation to make sure everything gets done. We don't do food mission. We don't do social service. We don't do health care. We don't do education. There are other facets within our community that make those things happen, and there's a lot of nonprofits that are involved in making that happen. So our grant and aid program is intended to provide financial resources to those entities that are doing that. So this year, I think we funded 40 different nonprofit organizations through that effort to the tune of about $320,000. We fund the Winter Haven Economic Development Council, Main Street Winter Haven, the Chamber of Commerce, Polk Vision, as community partners that help us fulfill our mission. We fund a handful of small programs that actually are run by other people but within our facilities. Keep Winter Haven Clean and Beautiful, the Ridge Art Association, the Marching Wolverines Community Band Program. Those are some programs that we fund. The mass transit system in Winter Haven. We partner with Lakeland Area Mass Transit to provide those services. That's about $300,000 alone in that one to make sure that we have mass transit for those in our community that don't have access to personal vehicles or other means of transportation. We also have a tremendous program with Heart for Winter Haven. I saw Brad here earlier. The commission a few years back really took to heart the issues we have in our community with homelessness. And I'll give a shout out to Commissioner Dancer because I think he was the primary champion of this when we first started it. There are over 5,000 children in the Polk County Public School System who are considered homeless. That means that they do not have stable housing or a known place to sleep each and every night. They may be living with relatives, in a hotel, in a car. They may be couch surfing with another classmate. We can't solve that for the entire county, but how do we address that in Winter Haven? So we've partnered with Heart for Winter Haven for the past couple years through financial support and aligning our mission and our goals with what they're doing to try and help people find permanent housing, sustainable housing, to keep people from becoming homelessness because they're about to get evicted or they don't have access to utility payments, or maybe they're about to lose their job because their car broke down and that cuts their paycheck off, and that's going to just strap them when it comes to housing. So we're doing a lot of work in that arena, and I expect that we're going to continue to do so. City has a budget of about $300 million. If you take out the personnel side of that, you're still talking well in excess of $200 million that we spend on everything from new construction of buildings to office supplies, from uniforms to fuel, from vehicles to computers, you name it. We're buying the same things that you are. One of the things we really want to focus on within the strategic plan is how do we do more of that locally? How do we do more of that with small business, with minority business? So we have a pretty bureaucratic procurement policy, and you want us to have that. We're spending your money. You don't want us to just willy-nilly throw that money out. You want to make sure we're vetting everything and we're getting the best value for what we're spending. When you're a small business, that's a very intimidating process. To submit a construction bid to the city of Winter Haven and you're going up against multi-million-dollar companies, it's very intimidating. They've done the process a lot of times. This is your first chance ever doing it. So through our procurement office and Bethany Owen, who's our procurement officer, we're going to be going out into the community and hosting procurement development programs to tell people, how do you go about getting on our bid list? How do you submit a winning proposal? What information do you need to have to make you more competitive and reduce some of that fear you have in going after city business? We also will be doing an annual open house where we tell you about all the major expenditures we're going to have over the coming year. Most of those are going to be in the capital arena, so building new things or replacing utilities. Why is that important? Well, a big company may see a bid come across the advertisement screen and say, okay, we'll go ahead and bid on that. We have the resources to do it. A small company doesn't necessarily have that luxury. But if they know that there's going to be a new community center that we're going to bid out in May, and they think that they're qualified to do that, they can plan for that now and not have to spin everything up when it comes on the market. They can start leveraging resources and building the partnerships so that they're better positioned to go after that. So we're excited to roll that out. how we advertise our bids, more robust communication on our website. Really excited to be working with the Chamber of Commerce. We just had a meeting yesterday. Valerie Dawson is helping head up a minority business initiative within the Chamber of how do we engage our small businesses and our minority and disadvantaged business enterprises here in Winter Haven to help them be more successful. We need a strong economy on all fronts. We're going to be working with the Winter Haven Economic Development Council on an effort to inventory all of our vacant land that we have that is land use and zoning that is aligned with commercial development. Also looking at where we have vacant parcels, so city center, in the heart of downtown where Lowe's is, you have half a dozen vacant storefronts in there. We want to inventory all that and get dynamic information, dynamic data that we can then use to go after businesses to try and get them in there. How do we fill those spaces? So we're really excited to be doing that with Bruce and his team at the EDC, and I expect that will probably happen sometime just after the first of the year. Mentioned the Ritz Theater. This place is so cool. Some of you probably grew up in here, either coming to movies. If you were here when it was a teen club. Dan is trying to bring back so many of those things now, not necessarily the teen club, but dances on Friday nights. A lot of cool things happening here. Why did the city buy this building? Was it because we didn't feel like we had enough to take care of? No, certainly not. We do recognize the cultural significance of a building like this and what it does for that quality of life within our community. This is an economic investment. We look at this building as a catalyst for more economic activity downtown. Certainly Theater Winter Haven is going to help us accomplish that. When you can fill this with 300 plus people for a concert or a show or a brunch, our intent is that when those people come here, they will spend more time downtown. They'll spill out those doors, or before they come into these doors, go visit one of our restaurants. Maybe they'll go to one of the bars afterwards. If they're here for a weekend brunch, maybe they'll peruse downtown and go to our retail centers. This is about activation of bringing new, unique guests into downtown that would otherwise not have a reason to come down here. This is a specific draw to bring them here. So for everything that we've done with this building, it is all about it being an economic catalyst and support system for the rest of downtown. Small business support. I'm really excited about this project. We get asked a lot, what are we doing to help small business? We don't run small business. We're not experts in that arena, and I would never suggest otherwise. I live by a philosophy that it is better to teach a man to fish than to give a man a fish. So from biblical reference, that probably speaks with a lot of you. Handing out fish doesn't benefit anybody. If I'm having a problem making a rent payment or a utility payment or something of that nature, if I go and take care of that for you today, that's no guarantee that it's not going to happen next month. It's not a sustainable solution. We focused long and hard on that of how do we create more sustainable solutions. So working with Eric Labby and Cedric Cox and Angie Hibbard from our CRA department, we've identified a program that is an educational, professional growth and development platform specifically tailored to small businesses. Focuses on things like business modernization, omni-channel marketing, restaurant resiliency, land leases and building leases, and a pretty cool fifth category that is tied to holiday trends and marketing around how do you maximize your business during the holiday season. This program would allow our small businesses throughout the entire city, small and large can participate, but it's really targeted for small businesses to go through some professional development training. It's online, it's at their pace, whether they choose to do it or not. Personally, if somebody said, hey, I've got some information on how to be a better city manager, sign me up. I don't care if I know it or not, it's a refresher if nothing else. Within our CRAs, our Florence Villa CRA and our downtown CRA, for those businesses that have completed 2 of those learning pathways, they become eligible and qualified then to apply for a new grant program that we're going to present to the CRA board in December. And that is intended to give financial support to them, a grant, to take something that they learn from those trainings and implement it. So if I went through business modernization and I've come to the realization that I need a new point of sale system, I'm working in the 1920s, and it's just not cutting it anymore. I'd like to be like Lucille's, where they come to the table and they've got that pad, and they punch everything in, and they swipe my card, and I'm all said and done right there. But I don't have the resources to implement something like that. This grant program would do those kind of things. So we're excited to launch that. Watch for more information on that. And that's for anybody in the entire community. The grant only exists for those that are within the CRAs, but it's anybody in the community can take advantage of that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care if people from outside the community take advantage of it. It's probably less than 5% that would do so. But the reality is, if they see that and they see a community that has an investment back into local business, maybe they'll say, hey, I want to get out of this other community and come do business in Winter Haven. The other cool thing with that is it may take that business that, say, is operating out of their home, or they're operating a food kitchen, and they say, I want to go have a bricks and mortar storefront on Central Avenue, or on Cypress Gardens Boulevard, or on MLK Boulevard. Going through these trainings may say, yes, I'm ready to do it, and here's the additional tools I need. Or it may say, whoop, I'm not ready yet. I've got to do some more things before I go and do that. If we prevent someone from making a bad decision by better educating them, I consider that a win, because we don't want anybody to fail. Annexation, we have a lot of places that say they're Winter Haven, but they're not Winter Haven. So they have a Winter Haven address, they may be on our water system, but they're not within the corporate limits. They're not supporting that tax base. So in a lot of places, we have annexation agreements in place with those communities, and we are undertaking a study right now to inventory all of those properties and identify what is the benefit financially to being inside the city versus remaining in the unincorporated area, to begin pursuing annexation of some of those properties. These individuals, they use your parks, they use your roads, they depend upon your emergency services just the same as you are, but they're not paying into that. We feel that we can represent those communities better as local government, and nothing against our county partners, but it's a long way from here to Bartow. I can tell you that it's about 3 or 4 blocks from here to City Hall, and you can get in and see these commissioners anytime you want. So we think that we can provide more responsive government to them, and we can also align the services we're providing with them being as city residents. The next pillar I want to talk about, so pillar number 2, is quality of life. When we talk about quality of life, obviously, parks, recreation, libraries, special events, those are given. Affordable housing is a tremendous quality of life. If I have the best parks that there are, if I have the most world-renowned library and special events, that's great. But if I can't afford to live there, what's my quality of life? If I'm living in dilapidated housing, if I live in a community where I've relocated from someplace that my culture and my beliefs are different, and I feel excluded versus included, what's my quality of life? So when we talk about quality of life, we're focusing on all of those dynamics. A couple things that we're doing, I mentioned the Blue Sky Project, affordable housing. This is, again, 88 units. Florence Place is the name of the development. It opened up this past year. It is completely full. I think before they even started signing leases, they had well over 3,000 applications of people wanting to get in there. There is a tremendous need for affordable housing in Winter Haven. City Commission a few years back established an affordable housing trust fund. They put money from the general fund every year into that. $250,000 goes towards affordable housing, and that is set aside for these types of developments to come to us so they can leverage some local investment into their bigger plans there. We have probably in excess of $1.5 million in our affordable housing trust fund right now. We're working with Blue Sky on another project. We're also working with the Winter Haven Housing Authority. So Lisa and the team over there, they're trying to do some really great things. Affordable housing is probably the hardest thing you could ever do, especially if you're trying to do it the correct way and avail yourself to federal tax financing credits. If you can't get those, it's virtually impossible. And to get those is a heavy, heavy lift. So we're here to support those agencies that are going after that however we can, and that contributes to it. I mentioned the money that we give to Heart for Winter Haven. Again, that is to try and help combat some of the homelessness and some of the things that impact an individual's quality of life in terms of housing. A couple big projects we have underway. Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center. This is a facility that was built in the 1970s on MLK Boulevard in the heart of Florence Villa. We did a robust, probably one of the most robust communication efforts with our community to figure out what do we do with this building. It's over 50 years old. It's very antiquated. The design doesn't meet current needs. It's inefficient. Community came back to us and said, we'd like you to tear it all down and start over. So the City Commission has invested $23 million to build a new facility on that property that will be almost double the size of the existing building. New double gymnasium, a branch library, a new swimming pool, outdoor play spaces, a tech lab, all these cool things, but it's not just about recreation. The intent is, how does this serve the bigger community? When kids need help with homework, when they're working and they don't have access to computers, there's a computer lab there. When the small business needs access to some technology that they may not have, they can come to this facility. We'll work with the chamber and other entities to come in and do business mentorship in that space. So this is more than just a recreation center. It is a true community center at the end of the day that will yield lots of benefits. That building, we joke, if you drove around Winter Haven after Hurricane Milton, we would all call each other and say, okay, I saw this damage here and I saw this damage here. I think it was MJ who called me and says, I got bad news. The Winter Haven Recreation Community Center has been completely leveled. Because if you go out there, there's nothing existing today. It's all been demolished, and we expect that building to open up hopefully around this time next year, probably late 2025. My effort or my marching orders to the staff is, I'd like to put a big bow on this and say Merry Christmas and give it back to the community in this new format. Chain of Lakes Park, what a cool project. Had a chance to tour this one just yesterday. So again, 1960s, we built this beautiful stadium down there. We have Major League Baseball, the Red Sox, the Indians, all kinds of great things that happened in that until 2008. And then we try and shoehorn in as much amateur sports as we can, and that doesn't really work. These are antiquated facilities that weren't designed for that. So in partnership with the Polk County Tourism and Sports Marketing Organization, we're making a $24 million investment into this property. The City Commission will approve the guaranteed maximum price on this at their commission meeting Monday night. When it's said and done, have 4 brand new artificial turf collegiate baseball fields that meet the needs of our tournaments that we bring in, as well as our local play. It activates that space in a way that's never been activated. To be able to see the lake from these baseball fields, people are going to be dying to come play here. It is absolutely gorgeous. Again, it's artificial turf, so it reduces our maintenance costs. We can turn those fields over. We don't get rained out every other day during the summer. Just a great opportunity. Remember I said sports and tourism, it's an export. We're bringing people from outside the area, inside the area, to leave their money here. This is what will drive that. So if you own a business that services people that are coming into town, food and beverage and retail and those types of things, these are the types of projects that will help make your cash register ring. That project will open up in, the baseball fields will be ready in 2025, February of 2025, so in about 4 months. So my contractors who are in this room that are working on that, we're on the clock still, and they're getting it done. The vertical buildings that are part of that project will probably not be ready until the summer, but we will have Russ Mat baseball on those fields come February of this year. We're right now engaging in a Parks and Recreation Master Plan, so Julie Adams is here and members of her team. They are out combing the community, doing focus groups and surveys. I think there's a survey at your table that we're asking for your feedback on how do we grow our parks and our recreation infrastructure to meet this growing demand. Where are we deficient in terms of geographic locations, and where are we deficient in terms of the types of facilities that you want and need? So they actually, I think you have a meeting probably tonight, I think it is. Tonight's a meeting. And there's another one next week, I believe it is, for public input. But if you can't make one of those, just fill out the survey. Give us your feedback so that, again, we can design the future of our parks and recreation system to meet your needs. Lake Elbert Trail, I know this is a mess over there on Lake Elbert Trail, so if you live in that area, I apologize for the inconvenience. But as I say time and time again, if you see orange cones somewhere, rest assured progress is happening. It's when you don't see orange cones that we have problems. So Lake Elbert Trail started probably 6 or 8 months ago. We are working on the western side of the lake, putting in that trail system that will go all the way around the lake. When it's said and done, you have a 2.4-mile trail system that surrounds the entire lake. It's not just about a trail system for recreation, though. This is about safe routes to schools. You have Brigham, Denison, Elbert, Polk State College that are all within close proximity to that, and a lot of people that need to walk to get to those campuses or would prefer to walk, but they don't necessarily have a safe passage. So this meets that demand. It also includes a tremendous stormwater enhancement project to better protect and manage the long-term health of Lake Elbert. It upgrades all of the utility, sewer, and water system around that lake, as well as improves the roadway itself. So that project I expect to be completed probably late spring, early summer of 2025. And that's probably been in the works, either in theory or in desire, for at least 50 years. I think if I talked to Rick Dancer, he would tell me that he started working on those efforts probably back in the 1980s. So a lot of good things happening there. Quality of life I mentioned is about housing. So the State Housing Initiatives Program, this is a program that the City of Winter Haven participates in. We get money from the state of Florida that is made available to help people that are within certain income brackets achieve housing, or sustain housing. So a lot of this money goes towards down payment assistance for those that are extremely low, very low, low income homes or families. It also goes to accommodating and helping finance out the improvements to existing homes, whether that's emergency repairs or necessary upgrades to doors and windows and roofs. It allows us to even do pre-storm disaster projects. If somebody has a tree that they're afraid is going to fall on their house, they can get SHIP dollars to have that tree removed so they don't feel the impacts if that does fall on their house. A year ago, we had about $1.8 million in balance in that fund. And Cedric Cox is somewhere here, I know, down here. If you haven't met Cedric, take time to do so. We stole him from Polk County about a year ago, and he hit the ground running, got together with our public affairs team. They launched a massive marketing campaign. They have either expended or encumbered 1.7 of that $1.8 million. That means that's dollars that are going out to help our residents make improvements in their quality of life. We got about $435,000, $440,000 again this year from the state of Florida, and that goes back into that fund so we continue the program. So if you know people that have housing needs and they're a low-income family and they live inside the city of Winter Haven, send them to Cedric so he can see if he's got a way that he can help them. Extremely proud of what we've done there. Tremendous lift in a very short period of time. We talked about the Ritz Theater. Again, Dan, you and your team, what you've done in here is great. Watch for the programming that happens here. Come be a part of this. This is so cool. Really exciting things. I think Queen is going to be here in a couple weeks. A huge Freddie Mercury fan, so I'll be somewhere down front. Taylor Swift, or someone that sounded or looked like Taylor Swift, was just here last weekend. I don't think Jason Kelsey was here. But all the same, they're doing some really cool things here. And our performing arts in downtown depend upon you as an audience. So please come support them. And with that, I'm going to invite Deputy City Manager MJ Carnevale onto the stage to give you a little update on what we're doing in the next two pillars, which include infrastructure and environmental stewardship.
Thank you, T. Good morning, everybody. Wonderful crowd here today. That's awesome to see. Just what an amazing space, right? So start off, we're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure. And so when we talk about that, I think most people jump right to roads and bridges, that type of infrastructure, right? But it's also water and sewer systems. It's also street lighting. It's also sidewalks, multimodal transportation. So for us, that means things like public transit, microtransit, trails. So we take all of those things into account when we talk about infrastructure. So there we go. So this beautiful picture is of a property on the east side of town called Bradco Farms. In the city, we take a very systems approach to water management, so thinking about how water impacts both our natural systems and our water supply. And so the purchase of this property allows us to not just preserve open green space for the future, but also allows us to secure some water that can be used to help offset supply needs into the future, but also make sure that there's water available for those natural systems. It is a gem in what we call our Sapphire Necklace, so that is a series of wetlands around the eastern side of the community, much in the way that the chain of lakes is a series of wetlands around the western side. More to come on that, but that's an exciting project. So everybody here, we talked about the water supply side a little bit. I assume everybody here flushed the toilet today? right? Did anybody not flush the toilet? I don't want to know. But that's all got to go somewhere, right? So this is our wastewater treatment plant in the southeast part of the community. It was built in the 70s and it's starting to show its age. So we are in the process of modernizing that facility. We recently went through a design build to bring a team on board of experts that'll help us to design that over the coming years and then begin construction. That will be, ultimately, we'll modernize and expand that facility, and that will ultimately be one of the largest projects the city will have ever undertaken. So lead and copper. So EPA, in the last year, released the new ruling that every utility provider within the country has to go through their entire system and identify if there are any lead, is there any lead within the system. Usually these are kind of small connections. So the city of Winter Haven is a utility provider. So just like every other community in the country, we're having to go through our entire system and identify those connections. So we've begun that, and that's a process of manually digging up pipes and looking for those connections, but then we're also using predictive modeling to help with that. So that helps us to understand where those connections may exist and how we can plan for their replacement. So that is something that is actively underway and that we are moving forward with, but it's one of the things that we are doing to continuously improve our system. Roadway maintenance, great. Has anybody here sat in any traffic from a construction project in the last year or so? Wonderful. Like T mentioned, that's a good thing, right? You gotta look at the bright side of that. That means a problem has been identified, plan's been developed, it's been funded, and it's beginning to get fixed. So we undertook the largest set of roadway improvements at least the last few decades for the city. I can't speak to all of the city's history, but we touched about 10% of roads within the city. So that is using different techniques to pave and resurface roads. But that's pretty huge. That's a lot more than we've done in a very long time. So hopefully you're seeing those results. We also continue to use really good data to drive that effort. So all of our public works vehicles are outfitted with sensors. They're taking like 50,000 readings a second as they go about their business in the city. And that feeds back to a central system that lets us identify what the condition of the pavement throughout the city is on an ongoing basis. So it allows us to make sure that we're investing dollars in the places that they're going to have the most impact or being very efficient with that. Transportation master planning. So last year, I think I spoke to you about what we called a blood work analysis of transportation within the city. So that was looking at our whole roadway network using some really cool tools and data to understand where we have issues. And much like blood work you get from your doctor, that doesn't necessarily solve anything. It just tells you, here's kind of what you got. We were able to take that and use it to apply to the Department of Commerce for a grant to do a transportation master plan. So that goes a step further, and what that did was it let us look at the entire community. If it was built out, right, if every parcel in the city developed, what does that do to our transportation system? And so we've now gone through that process. We know where those challenges we anticipate will be. And now in the next year, we'll spend time trying to begin putting solutions behind those. Many of the roads within the city, as I think a lot of people know, are state and county roads. So those, those are not something that we maybe do directly, but it's something that we work with our partners to make sure it gets done. All right, moving on to our environmental stewardship pillar. So this is really about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. I think very quickly we think about lakes in the chain of Lake City, right? But it's more than that. It's waste management. It's how we use land use planning as a tool to preserve areas for the future. So Green Space Adoption Program. This is one we're really excited about. You've probably seen things like this other places you've traveled where businesses and community groups can adopt a public space that they care about. And so there's the superficial piece of that, right, that gets a space adopted, gets it beautified, gets it cared for in a little greater detail. But there's a social piece of that too, right? When we talk about retaining our character of our community, who we are, small town feel, having businesses and community groups that care for public spaces, give them some ownership over that, and creates more connection within the community. Businesses can partner to adopt public spaces. So there's a social piece of that is maybe a little harder to grasp than just that superficial piece. But that's something we're really excited about. Litter control. So litter is a problem that is fluid, right? It moves across property lines. It's maybe in public spaces, maybe in private spaces, and it's hard to manage. So it's an area that maybe the city can't do on its own. So we have created a position within the city organization that is a litter control coordinator. So they will work with businesses and local community groups to try to address that issue across the city. It's a good example. Tia mentioned, we don't have to do everything, but we have to make sure everything gets done. So this is one of the ways that we do that to make those spaces better for everyone. Septic systems are a great example of the way we use systems thinking when we talk about water management, right? So septic systems, for those of you who don't know, they drain into the ground. And so that groundwater then can ultimately have negative impacts on our lakes. So we have done a lot of work over the last few years to get some of those septic systems connected to our sewer system, which means it's no longer draining into the ground and no longer having negative impact on lakes. So the next phase of that will begin on the east side of Lake Hartridge, and you'll see that work start to get under construction this year. And then we just got a really exciting grant from the EPA that'll allow us to do some analysis of the Inwood area, just kind of on the west side of Lake Howard, to really look at how we can convert some of those septic systems to sewer, but then also go a little further and look at drainage systems and streets within that area if we're going to be in there doing work anyways. Urban forestry is something that has been near and dear to the community's heart over the last few years, and there's been a lot of spotlight on it. So a couple years ago, we went through, began collecting data to understand where the urban forest is today. And what we found, kind of in short, is that we're taking out more trees than we're putting back. And so we began an effort to identify where are all the locations where we can begin planting trees and try to get moving in that direction. We developed an urban forest master plan that addressed that and a number of regulatory issues that help with how we get more trees planted on new development, things like that. But having that master plan adopted by the City Commission set us up for a grant from the federal government that is going to let us invest about $750,000 in expanding the urban canopy over the next 5 years. So it's one of those things, they say, how long does it take to grow a 100-year-old pine tree? Right, it takes 100 years, so you got the best time to plant a tree is today. So going ahead and getting that going is something we're really, really excited about. I know helps to meet some goals of the City Commission. Lake Conine Nature Park. So this is the city's 4th nature park. It is in the northeast side of town, on the east side of Lake Conine. If you guys have driven up Lucerne Park Road, you've probably seen some construction, kind of figuring what's going on over there on the west side. So this is a project that we restored the wetland there a couple of years ago in partnership with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, Polk County, DEP, and some others. That took the last major stormwater outfall to the chain of lakes offline, and now all of that stormwater from about a 400-acre watershed that goes back up towards Winter Haven Rec all gets treated before it goes to Lake Conine. But when we did that, we literally laid the foundation to drop recreation elements in after the fact. And so those recreation elements are what's actively under construction now, and we look forward to cutting the ribbon on that in the coming year. So South Lake Howard Nature Park was the city's first nature park. It's been there for a little over 20 years, and we recently just purchased a piece of property adjacent to the nature park that allows us to provide some additional stormwater treatment, capture some additional stormwater, which helps to minimize the potential for flooding in some of those surrounding areas. But it also gives us an opportunity to expand the recreational elements within that park. So that's something that it's about 80% design, and we were fortunate to get recreation grant funding for that, and also funding from the Heartland Headwaters Act, which is an outcome of the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. Our state representatives, I think I saw some of them here earlier, so I think Sam was in the back there. We're big advocates to help us get that done. And I mentioned the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. That is something that is unique to Polk County. It is really more on the supply side, but also looks at natural systems. But it's an opportunity for organizations from across the county to work together to protect the future of those resources for our area and ensure we have safe water supply into the future. And the fact that there's that collaboration amongst those communities is pretty unique. If you look at other counties in Florida, a lot of them they don't work together in the same way that cities within Polk County do. And I think the Polk Regional Water Cooperative is a great example of that. I think our state legislative delegation is a great example of that. There's a lot of collaboration and cohesion within our area that makes this place special. So lakes, like I said, Chain of Lake City. So one of the things that we put a lot of effort into is understanding the status of our lakes. Our Lakes Advisory Committee has kind of given us the direction over the years that we need to be the premier knowledge source for lakes within our area. And that's valuable because we have a role in managing lakes, but lakes are very complicated and get kind of messy jurisdictionally. So just some of the jurisdictions involved in lake management are the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the State Department of Environmental Protection, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, and then locally, the Lakes Region Lake Management District and Polk County. So, and there's more. So one of the things we put a lot of focus on is having good relationships with those agencies and understanding what their goals are so that we're able to work together very efficiently. But another piece of that is having that data to understand what's happening in our lakes and how we can work with those groups and what we need to ask them to provide us help and kind of get improvements made when they're needed. So we have our annual lakes report. It's on our city's website. It's an exceptional document. But with that, there's a lake health index for each lake within the city. And that looks not just at the status of what that lake looks like today, but it also tracks the trends, right? So what's improving, what's declining, and where do we begin to leverage different management strategies to improve those. And solid waste collection. So we're always looking at ways to collect solid waste within the city and improve that and then be more efficient about it. We're using a lot of tools and software that make that process smoother. We're investing in new equipment that helps to make that process smoother. One of the big things that's been going on in that world right now, Polk County is doing away with recycling. You guys may have seen some of that, and I think T mentioned earlier that there are a lot of people in the Winter Haven area that are not in the Winter Haven city limits. So there's a little confusion in some areas about, are we continuing recycling, are we not continuing recycling? So the city of Winter Haven will continue to recycle. If you have a blue recycling bin, your recycling will continue to get picked up. That is a management strategy that continues to be effective for us at this point in time, and it's something that we will continue to do. I'd also be remiss not to mention, obviously we just came through 2 hurricanes, and there's still a lot of debris that we're in the process of picking up. We began debris collection the day after the hurricane, and talking with Brittany this morning, I think we're just past about 75% complete with our first pass on that. We will come back and do another pass on loose debris, and then we'll come back for bag debris, and then kind of construction debris, white goods, so washers, dryers, any of that kind of stuff that needs to be out before we transition back to kind of normal junk and debris pickup within the city. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Michael, to talk about community safety.
Thank you, MJ. So community safety, again, it's like quality of life. If I say community safety, people would probably say police, fire, emergency services, emergency management, code compliance. Community safety, as our commission learned about last night and got to experience firsthand, is about so much more than just that. It's about safe water. It's about sidewalks. It's about street lights. It's about teaching children how to swim to prevent drownings. It's about doing background checks on all of our employees and those that volunteer within our youth sports programs. That's what makes a community safe, that and so much more. So it is about feeling secure, well prepared, and cared for. And that is the focus of everything we do in this area. So a couple highlights from the past year in going forward within community safety. I'm going to ask Vance to stand up. If you haven't met Vance, I always say the most well-known person in a community other than the mayor is the chief of police. So if you haven't had a chance to meet Vance, make sure you do so. Vance joined our team in February of 2024 as the deputy chief, and we kind of called that the chief in waiting. He was sworn in as the chief of police around early October of this year, actually took helm around October 1st, and has hit the ground running and is doing amazing things within our police department. Vance comes to us after a very long and decorated career with the Polk County Sheriff's Office and in the military. So we are grateful to have him on board, and we're grateful for the relationships that he has built over his career here in Polk County that we now get to take advantage of by him being on our team. So Vance, welcome aboard, and we're glad you're here. One of the things that happened this past year, if you don't have children, you may not realize this, or if you don't have middle school or high school age children, you may not realize this, but for many years, the city of Winter Haven received funding from the sheriff's office to put our police officers in Winter Haven middle schools and high schools. We call them school resource officers. This past year, under the direction of Superintendent Hyde, the school board wanted to get away from using all the municipalities and really focus that under one umbrella of the sheriff's office. And I'm going to tell you, to me that makes perfect sense. You have all these different schools across the entire county, and when you have 17 different jurisdictions that are helping respond to the emergencies within there, you have 17 different policies and protocols and processes and people that are trained differently. So by having all those together under one umbrella, you create some consistency and some efficiencies and some continuity that's needed. So if you work in a business where you've ever had grant-funded positions, what happens when the grant dries up? Positions go away, right? Well, we recognize that we have a need in our community for more police officers. So we took each one of those 6 police officers that would be funded through that grant program, and we created new funding within the general fund, and we added 6 officers to our workforce this year that are now out on the streets and doing unique things within crime and law enforcement in our department, not assigned to the schools. So we were able to expand the service, and I can say without really any hesitation that when I present my recommendations for a budget to the City Commission next year for fiscal year 25-26, it will likely include additional police officers again. We've grown by over 50% or by 100% in the past 24 years. We got to make sure that we have law enforcement in place to respond to the number of calls that we get. Now, I don't want you to walk away from here thinking Winter Haven has an astronomical crime rate, because it doesn't, because of the exceptional work that those men and women do. But the number of calls that we get, that we respond to, everything from something doesn't look right or sound right, or I saw this, there may not be any crime, but we have to respond to each and every one of those. So I want to make sure that we have the resources to do it. We have 2 new fire stations that are underway. Fire Station 4 will open up probably in January of 2025. This is going to be located right near Polk State College. It's on 7th Street, adjacent to the Diamondplex softball complex. This is a facility that will house a fire engine company. It will have some support services for law enforcement, and it will also house our safe neighborhoods and code compliance operations. This is a project that's been in the works for about a year now, under construction, so we're excited to invite you all out when we have that grand opening, let you tour that. This will take one of the fire engine companies that's presently housed in downtown but serves that northeast area and relocate them closer to where the people they're serving are located. So we want to make sure that we are strategic in where we place our fire stations so we can be the most efficient in responding to what the need is. Fire Station 5 is presently in design. This is going to be at Lake Hartridge Nature Park, so out off of Havendale Boulevard, right before you get to 21st Street. We have a nature park there. We'll build another fire station there. We have a temporary unit on site now, but this is intended to meet the needs of those in our Northwest community. Also, this will be the fire rescue units that are closest to our airport. And you can imagine, you want to make sure that you want to have efficient timing to get to an airport if you have an emergency need there. So we're excited about that. We're also already contemplating where will Fire Station 6 be. As this community grows, we need to be thinking ahead and strategically about where that growth is happening and where are we positioned to meet those needs. So that's one of the things that probably within the next 3 years, you'll see us looking for land and for setting aside the funds to be able to build that sixth station. In the past 3 years, or over a 3-year period, the City of Winter Haven will have built 3 brand new bricks and mortar permanent fire stations in our community. That's pretty impressive for a community of this size. I mentioned that community safety is not just about police and fire, it's about safety of our pedestrians and our residents in everyday life. So filling in sidewalk gaps and creating pedestrian connections is very important for us. We currently have a project that is funded through some state and federal dollars on Lake Howard Drive, so from the canal that connects Lake May to Lake Howard, going back around the south side of the lake, it will eventually get all the way to and past Lake Howard Nature Park. But this project is going on right now, so if you drive that way in the morning, I apologize for the disruption you've had with some flaggers out there. We've been able to keep that roadway completely open with just flagging and not have to shut it down, but that will wrap up here in the coming months. That road will also be completely repaved, but I can't tell you how many times I've driven that road and I see people out walking in the street because there's no sidewalk infrastructure. So again, making a significant investment there. We're also doing a federal grant program called Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is a program that looks at specific intersections based upon historical data of accidents and crashes and and conflicts in those areas and coming up with strategies to mitigate that. Now, DOT just did this over the past 2 years, and they looked at the DOT intersections in Winter Haven, and we're grateful for that. We use that as a jumping point to say, okay, we've got the big intersections and what we need to do there. We now need to look at some of these smaller intersections and figure out how do we improve those. So again, thinking ahead, being strategic in where we make investments. I mentioned the airport. Troy Heidel has been our airport director for about a year now. Doing a fantastic job out there. Did you know that Winter Haven has a regional airport? A lot of people don't know that. And even those that do know we have one, a lot of people have never been there. In fact, we just had our Hands on Haven event, an event to highlight city government. We did this out there about 2 weeks ago, and I was amazed by how many people came out onto the airfield and said, I had never been out here. So we're trying to do a better job of educating people on what's happening there, but we're also trying to do a better job of educating people that use our airport on what safety looks like. So Troy and his team, they've created an airport safety advisory committee over the past year or so, and that group is helping us as pilots identify what are some of the conflicts and what are some of the challenges they face as users of the airport. They produced now 2 different safety videos. Those are available on the city's YouTube channel. I think they may also be on our website. They're in the process of producing a 3rd one. So if you ever want to get some insights into the airport, check out those videos. If you've never been to the airport, it's got a fantastic restaurant out there. Go visit Ben Ships and the folks at Jack Seaplane Air Base out there. Take a flight with them. If you're ever interested in learning how to fly, we have a number of flight schools and academies out there. We'd love to welcome you out to the Winter Haven Airport. Other thing that's happening at the airport that's kind of interesting for Winter Haven, Tampa General Hospital has a Life Flight or AeroMed program. This has not traditionally been housed in our area. There was some activity at the Bartow Air Base, certainly a lot more towards the Tampa, Hillsborough County area. They needed to get a more permanent location and came to us at the airport and said, is there an opportunity for us to house a medevac operation out of the airport? So we are excited to welcome TGH AeroMed to Winter Haven Airport. This is important because if you've ever seen, those horrific car crashes that happen on interstates and on state roads and major intersections, or even the incidents that involve children or elderly, that they have to be life flighted out. If that helicopter has to come from outside of our area, that's precious seconds and minutes that are lost. Having this right here in Winter Haven, it speeds up that response time for us. In addition, AeroMed is also locating their maintenance operations from, I believe, Sebring, is going to be housed at the Winter Haven Airport. So again, that's additional revenue going back into the airport. That is ensuring some additional safety at the airport. We're really excited to welcome them to our community. Safe Neighborhoods, this is also commonly known as code compliance. Our Safe Neighborhood group continues to go out and visit with our community. They do neighborhood initiatives every quarter where Tanya Ayers and her team get together with police and fire, public works, utilities, nonprofit groups, and we go out and we walk through the entire community, a specific area, and meet with people and try and identify what some of the challenges they're facing are and how do we respond to that right then and there. It could be as simple as someone's got, a tree that's about to fall on their house and they don't know how to deal with that. We're able to help them navigate through that. They maybe don't have smoke detectors in their homes. We take smoke detectors and give them to them. They may not have numbers on their house. Why is that important? Well, if Vance or if Sonny and their staff need to show up at your house because you called 911 and there's no numbers on that house, that's a problem. So they put numbers on houses. They look at all these different things. There may be somebody that suddenly is now in a wheelchair and they don't have a ramp to get into their home. Our nonprofits often step up and say, we're going to put a ramp at your home. This is how we're going to do it. So it is about being proactive and really responding to a need without that need coming to us, but us going to try and find that. If you're involved with an organization that would like to be a part of that, reach out to Tanya. She's down here in front. She'd love to have you join us on a neighborhood initiative, a neighborhood walk. Charlie Bird brought this program to light probably 5 years ago, thereabout, and it has been a tremendous program for us in helping our community. The other thing I'll say about that group, MJ mentioned after the hurricanes, we were out picking up debris the day after. Tanya and her team within Safe Neighborhoods are responsible for damage assessment. So they have to travel every home in this entire city and determine how much damage was caused by the hurricane. That's a major undertaking. If you don't do that, don't count on FEMA to help you. They completed this entire community in 3 days. 72 hours under her leadership, went out, scoured this entire community, and completed our report in 3 days. That is unprecedented and so important. The other thing that's going on right now, this week as a matter of fact, I'm sad to say that Sonny Emery, who's our fire chief, is going to be retiring in January. Don't worry, we're going to have a big party for him, and you're all invited. But Sonny has had a very decorated career with us in police and in fire, and he was our fire marshal and probably worked with a lot of you on new businesses. He's earned his rest, and he's going to take advantage of that. So we are recruiting for a new fire chief right now. We expect to make a decision on that, I hope by the end of November, and be able to make that announcement and then welcome that person aboard in January. So much like when Vance came on board and could work alongside David Brannon to kind of get the ins and outs of the organization, a new chief will be able to work alongside Sonny. So there's a smooth transition, and you as our customers don't ever notice a difference, that it's that smooth of a transition. Our last pillar I'm going to talk about is responsible government, and I'm going to be quick on this one, but responsible government is really what these 5 do in my office. This is what our focus is. We have to be responsible in how we're managing money and how we're delivering services. So managing resources smartly and fairly with citizen input. So I mentioned that strategic plan. I'm not going to deliberate any further on that, but that really is, I think, the first and foremost piece of responsible government. It's not I'm guessing, it's not, oh, that's a good idea, let's go try it. It's here's an actual plan that we're going to follow and we're going to hold to, and we'll adjust our sails as the winds shift, but we know the direction in which we're going. So watch for more information on that. One thing that is happening with the strategic plan that you all have access to and will have greater access to is a transparency dashboard that will be on the city's website. There's some information on there now, but as we have created metrics to measure all these things in here, we will be posting that as our report card back to the community on our website. Again, we're holding ourselves accountable. Remember, this can't be spots, can't be on the top shelf. It has to be in our efforts every single day. The budget in brief, you have a copy of this document at your seat. Our annual budget, that $300 million budget, is about 500 plus pages long. It's a great read. I'm in it every day. For a kind of a data junkie like myself and a lot of my staff, we live in that book. It tells us what we decided and how we were going to do it, and it's a quick reference back to where we put money for this, that, or the other. You don't want to read 500 pages. We gave you 4. So that 4-page document, this is the first time we've ever done this in the city. This is to communicate to you as the public what our priorities are from a numerical standpoint and where the money goes and how it's expended. So please take time to look at that. I'm going to give you a quick little tidbit on budget. $300 million is what our total budget is. It'll show up as about $267 million in the budget because there's some transfers that happen in there, but at the end of the day, it truly is $300 million. People tell us all the time, taxes, taxes, taxes. I pay too much in taxes because they get a tax bill and it has all their taxes on it. If you break out what you actually pay to the city of Winter Haven in taxes, it's a very small percentage of what is actually on your tax bill. You have county taxes, you have school taxes, you have Swift Mud taxes, you have maybe lakes management taxes, all those different things show on there. When we look at how much revenue the city takes in tax revenue from ad valorem property taxes, it's about $28 million. That's less than 10% of the total budget that we operate with. To operate the Winter Haven Police and Fire Department, we fall short on ad valorem taxes by about $3.5 million. We're well over $30 million just to operate those 2 departments. Now, you won't hear me complain about that. We need to invest as much as we can in those departments. That's critical stuff. That's what you all want. But I say that just to point out that we have to be very creative. We have to be very intentional in going after grant dollars and in partnerships where we can leverage money from outside sources to help offset the cost of what it takes to operate a city. We're extremely proud of how that goes, and I think that if you'll take some time to look at that budget in brief, you'll have some great takeaways. Accreditation is something that we're priding ourselves on. So this past year we had 2 accreditations. Give a shout out to your Winter Haven Police Department. They got reaccredited this year. This is the 24th year that you've had an accredited police department. That means that that police department has been assessed, evaluated, graded on achieving and meeting the best management practices of law enforcement agencies across the entire country. And I think there's international components of that as well. So that's outstanding to say you have an accredited police department. For the first time ever, where's Brittany? She's down front here. MJ started this effort as Public Works Director. When he got promoted, Brittany stepped in and she picked it up with Tyler Williams and that whole team that's here. They went and got the City of Winter Haven's first ever accreditation for your Public Works Department. So I'm going to give you a little kind of data nut here. There are 67 counties in the state of Florida. There's 411 cities. I'm going to assume every one of those has a Public Works Department. There are however many cities and counties across the entire country. There are 215 public work agencies in the United States that are accredited. There's 21 in the state of Florida, and we're one of them. So that is outstanding. That means that we are doing things. We are doing things in alignment with the best industry practices that are out there to ensure we're meeting your needs responsibly, efficiently, accurately. We're also presently working on accreditation within our Parks and Recreation Department, as well as within our Fire Department. We don't have accreditation opportunities everywhere, all the different departments that we have, but any place that we can measure ourselves against the best industry practices, we will continue to do that so we can report back to you that we are doing it at the highest possible level. Talk about credit ratings for a minute. Just like you have a credit rating, you have a credit score. So how much debt you have, how you spend money, what your income levels are, all those things drive your credit rating, right? Maybe you know what your number is, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to know. Cities also have the exact same thing. So it pertains back to our debt. There are 3 different agencies that rate crediting for government agencies. We use Standard & Poor, which is S&P, and we use Fitch Ratings, or what's known as Fitch, to evaluate our general fund debt status, as well as what we have within our utility system. I think last year I was able to report to you that we improved in both our utility system rating and in our general fund rating. Again, this year we were evaluated. I'm happy to report that our Fitch rating for the general fund has gone up from, I think it was a AA stable to now it's a AA positive. On the Fitch side, it's a AA stable on the S&P side, and on our water system, a AA minus stable and a AA minus. These are exceptionally strong credit ratings that have improved or stayed the same over the past 2 years, despite the city borrowing funds to invest in new capital endeavors. So when we go out and we bond for projects, it's not diminishing our credit because of the other policies and procedures we have in place to supplement and supply and mitigate those impacts. So CJ Scott, our CFO, has been implementing policy after policy with our commission. They have embraced those, and from a credit worthiness, your city is as sound as anyone around. And I think that that is a testament to sound leadership from your city commission. So kudos to you all. Last thing I'm going to say, the last thing I'm going to point out is you all own and work in businesses and you want to have the best employees you possibly can, correct? You don't want to hire slackers. You don't want to wonder, are they going to show up today? You want to have the best that you can. I would guess that you want to make sure you have the best garbage service that you can. You want to have the best police officers that you can, the best firefighters, the people that are out working, maintaining your parks or teaching kids in our libraries. You want them to be the best that they can. We face the same challenges that you do. When inflation strikes, your insurance goes up, our insurance goes up. And I will tell you, our insurance goes up by a lot more than yours does. We're probably in the $3.2, $3.4 million range on our insurance right now for our properties. We see the same costs that you see. Fuel goes up, we buy more fuel than anybody in this community. When it comes to hiring and retaining workers, you all lose people that go say, hey, I can make 25 cents more working down the street, in a fast food restaurant, or I can go do construction this week, even though that may, wash up in a year, I'm going to go chase that dollar. That impacts us. So one of the things that we looked at was we need to find a way to make sure we're getting the best people for our jobs and that we're keeping the best people in those jobs. So we had proposed to the City Commission this past year, we need to raise the starting rate of pay for our lowest entry-level positions above what the general industry is doing so that we're not having to compete for that same person, that we're getting them and we're keeping them. When I'm losing a wastewater treatment plant operator because they'll go make a quarter more working for another agency, that's a problem. That is a tremendously technical position that I can't afford to lose. So we were paying our entry-level positions at $14.55 an hour. That's for somebody mowing lawns. That's for somebody working in our water department, someone working within our streets department. The commission recognized that the cost of living in Polk County, you honestly have to be making about $20.24 as a single individual in Polk County today in order to have a sustainable quality of life. That's to cover your rent, your vehicle, your food, all your consumables, everything that you're going to go through as a single individual living on your own, $20.24. I'd love to be able to pay every one of our employees $20 an hour. I would never have a single vacancy. But I also don't have the funds to do that. It's just not realistic. So we did go back and look at that. We were able to raise our starting pay to $16 an hour for our employees. That gave every one of our employees a bump in pay. That means that our lowest paid employees are around $33,000 a year. If you think about could you live on $33,000 a year, it's tough. In this community, it's very, very tough. But we have to take bites at that apple. And on behalf of 700 plus employees, I want to extend to the City Commission their heartfelt appreciation for what you all did. There's not a day that goes by that somebody hasn't reached out and said, I can't thank you enough for what the commission did for us to make this a place that we can stay and have a long time career. Those are the employees that we want to keep to serve you. It's not about, making them wealthier and this legacy, here's what my future is. It's about how do we keep the best people here to make sure you're getting the absolute best service. So very proud of that. And with that, that is a summary of what is happening in your city. Our city, my city. This is an extremely positive time for us. We have challenges, as the mayor said. Growth is going to continue. You can stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and ignore it. You can try and stop it. That's not going to happen. It's going to continue. It's going to continue to happen around you, and you'll feel the impacts one way or the other. So the best that we can do is embrace it and try and mitigate and manage it the best that we can. So I'm going to invite Katrina back out, and I think we have some Q&A. I'm going to invite the mayor to come back to the stage with us, and MJ to come out, and we'll try and answer some questions for you.
All right, so you all have those QR codes. If you have more questions, you can keep sending them in. They will come to me right up here. All right, we'll start out with what shelters are available for children in Winter Haven?
Shelters. So Winter Haven, honestly, and Brad's here somewhere. Brad may know better. I don't know that we have any actual shelters in play today. I do know that Talbot House has acquired the former Salvation Army facility that was up on MLK Boulevard, and their intent is to reopen that as an expanded sheltering service. It had very few beds in it in more recent operating years. They're looking to expand that. I think they're going to do away with there may have been a thrift store or something within that they're going to make that more shelter space. And from the discussions I've had with them, and I don't believe this has changed, they're going to focus entirely upon women and children. And that is the historical use of that shelter originally. And I think that through their renovations, they hope to be open sometime in 2025, although I don't know an exact time frame.
Where can we access the Transportation Master Plan?
Transportation. So the Transportation Master Plan has, so the Transportation Master Plan, we are in the final phases of wrapping up the draft. We'll take that back and present it to the City Commission, and then once that is done, we will make that publicly available, just like all of our other documents within our webpage.
And we'll certainly, when that goes to the City Commission, that'll be advertised through our agendas. So if you want to come hear that presentation, come be a part of that.
All right. This audience member gets a gold star. They've been studying our strategic plan. For strategy 3.2.5, which I believe has to do with sidewalks, will the 0.4-mile sidewalk gap along Cypress Gardens Boulevard between Advent Health and the Nissan dealer be completed?
So sidewalking, and I'm going to look to Eric wherever he is, when we do development projects, there's a requirement that they build sidewalks within that development. So if that is in the corridor where that Advent Health development exists, then that will be part of their site plan and something they'll be required to do. If it's outside of that and it's in undeveloped land, that would be an effort we'd have to do with DOT because that's their corridor. But if it's in that section where development is approved and the site plan has to include that sidewalk.
The parking garage has had many spots blocked off for a while now. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yep. So we had a structural engineering inspection completed there. Everything is sound. There's some filler that goes in the gaps that we are working to replace and just make some repairs proactively in that parking garage before it causes any issues. So blocking those spaces off just out of an abundance of caution as we go through and make those repairs.
And we expect those to be done probably within the next, I'd say, maybe 60, 90 days. Hopefully we can get that knocked down and get all those reopened back up. But MJ hit it perfectly. It is out of an abundance of caution that we want to make sure that where people are parking their cars, that we don't end up, if something comes out of those areas where we've got some caulking issues, that we're not paying for somebody's new paint job on their car. You can appreciate that, I'm sure.
Does the city actively solicit new development from specific parties or firms?
Yes and no. So I think as we have engagements, and the EDC would be more involved in this aspect of it, if we know somebody is looking, and we get those leads from Florida Commerce and other clearinghouses of people that are looking to locate in the area, we may reach out through the EDC, and the Industrial Logistics Park may do this as well. But those are few and far between. If we hear that somebody's looking for our area, how do we market ourselves best to make ourselves attractive for that, if it truly fits with what we're looking for our community? The other thing is I mentioned that inventory that we'll be undertaking of all of our vacant land, commercial land and commercial properties, and using that to leverage the data about what would fit in here, and then through some of those national associations, reaching out to them and saying, we've got this space, we'd love to see a grocer, or we'd love to see this type of retail, this is what's available. So we're marketing the property with some end desired use, but not necessarily we want company ABC right here.
Can businesses receive data that you referenced on cost of living for Winter Haven and Polk County areas so they too can adjust pay scales?
Yeah, and certainly if you just get with me, whoever asked that question, we'll give you an access to, it's a web link that we use that measures that for Polk County. And it's interesting because it spells it out not just on the single individual, but is it a single individual with one child, with two children? Is it a dual income couple or household? And it changes based upon what the dynamic makeup is of the family. So get with me afterwards and we can provide that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know we...
It's the MIT Livable Wage Calculator.
MIT Livable Wage Calculator. There you go.
Will the city be looking at Pope Road, specifically regarding the parking on that road with the new chicken restaurant?
Why did the chicken cross the road? I don't know that one has come across our radar as an area of concern because they have parking on that property, but the fact that you brought that up kind of plugs that into my head. I'm sure MJ and Brittany will make note of that. and do some type of assessment to see what's actually happening there.
We talked about Lake Albert a little bit. We have a question asking about the roads on the west side of Lake Albert that are getting extra traffic during that project, and if those will be repaved when that project is done.
So like I mentioned, we use data to drive our pavement management program. So if there are impacts, one of the cool things about collecting that data in real time is if there are impacts, that will show up pretty quickly. So if there is damage to those roads, and if they start to degrade faster than they might have otherwise, they will climb up to the top of that paving list faster.
Is there anything that the city is doing to help control rent prices so that people like first responders and teachers can afford to live where they work?
No, when you get into rent control, it's a very slippery slope, and there's a lot of legalities to that. I wish I could say that we had a plan for how do you target your first responders and your teachers, but it's not just those segments. It's pretty much anybody that's in that working class is facing the same challenge. So while there's not an effort per se on rent control, it is how do you make sure that there's enough housing inventory and enough competition within that housing inventory to keep the market in check. If you only have a handful of multifamily units, it's a supply and demand equation. So the more that you have, the more affordable that becomes. And certainly when we work with developers, we're trying to push them in the direction of get this as affordable as it possibly can be, so that those individuals, nurses, nurses and firefighters, police officers, educators, utility workers and garbage men, our landscapers, all those folks have an opportunity to have a quality of life. But rent control is a very difficult thing. And if you go and you research kind of what's happened in the Tampa area in recent years, it is highly problematic and a lot of people would say very discriminatory in how that's applied. And so it's a very slippery slope. It's like touching that third rail. That's what you're trying to accomplish, is a lower rent. That may not be the best tool to do that.
All right, we've got a series of questions all around the same topic, specifically looking for parks and recreation opportunities that are for a diverse population, including children with autism, perhaps in the southeast area of Winter Haven, or how is the city just preserving land for future parks and city uses?
Yeah, great question. So I am happy to report that the city just did a project, was with a nonprofit and through the Friends of the Library to create a sensory garden at the downtown library. That's kind of like our first big foyer into dealing with our special needs population at that facility, along with their sensory lab that's inside. The Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center, when it comes online, will have a similar component on that property. That's a tremendous need that every community has. This is a very marginalized segment of the population, and one that doesn't always get the attention that it deserves and warrants. As we look in Southeast Winter Haven, I mentioned that Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So I fully expect that some of the feedback we'll get from citizens will be about what are we doing in that area of that demographic, and then geographically, what do we have available in Southeast Winter Haven? I can tell you Southeast Winter Haven is one of the key areas that we're looking for land to develop larger scale recreation, because that's where we've seen such a tremendous growth in recent years.
All right. Winter Haven is clearly working for the citizens. How can we as citizens act to support your success in the many important objectives that are established? We want you to win.
Well, one of the things that we are always looking for is citizens' engagement. So we make sure that we take projects that we are planning and developing to different areas of the city so that all of our citizens can be involved. And we were just talking about the master plan, transportation master plan. We're going to have citizens' involvement in that. So we welcome engagement of all of our citizens into projects and developments that we are carrying out throughout the city.
I'll add one thing to that. If you have an interest in being on a citizen advisory committee, we have countless boards and committees that we're always recruiting for. I think we're in the reviewing applications right now for our airport advisory committee, but whether it's urban forestry or multimodal transportation or cultural arts or library, lots of different boards, get involved in those. Get involved in the CRAs, get involved in the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. If you have not heard of or participated in the City U program, that is our version of a Citizens Academy. We don't call it an academy, we call it a university because you should get college credit for it. It is an 8-week intense learning opportunity. We just graduated our 3rd class 2 weeks ago. And if any of those folks are here, if you'd raise your hand, I know I saw a couple of them, talk to these people about their experience and what they learned. I think they thoroughly enjoyed it. That gives you tremendous insights and additional ways to get involved in our organization.
Yes, I saw a lot of the graduates here. I signed all of the certifications, so I know you're here.
All right. Roughly how much money does our city save by utilizing grants and external funding for large infrastructure projects?
A lot. I mentioned, $28 million of your general fund, $28 million of our total budget is in ad valorem revenues. So we're extremely dependent upon other grants. Those range from, it could be small grants that we get for programmatic purposes. That South Lake Howard Nature Park expansion has about a $450,000 grant from Heartland Headwaters, a $200,000 grant from DEP. Gary Hubbard just secured a grant from Resilient Florida for about $6.5 million for the Bradco Farms project. We are constantly pursuing massive amounts of grant money. We just, this coming Monday, we'll approve pending the commission's action on this, they're set to approve a grant effort where we're hiring someone on to continue going after more and more grants for us. I'd say in the capital realm of things, we're probably in the multiple tens of millions of dollars that we secure in grant fund. We also leverage not necessarily the grant side of it, but programs like the State Revolving Fund. This is a means where we can finance projects through the state of Florida at close to 0% interest rates. So that is a very, it's not just about where do you get people to give you money, but it's where do you get people to loan you money where it doesn't really cost you anything to borrow it. We also use a lot of debt financing, and we're very selective on what projects we'll go after for debt financing. People think debt's a bad word. I'll tell you that debt financing for capital projects is an important aspect of local government because you don't want to foot the bill for 100% of something that's going to serve residents for the next 20 or 30 years. That's not fair to you. So when you debt finance that out, you're spreading the cost of that project so that future people that come into the organization that get the benefit from the project are also helping to fund the expense of building it. So we use a lot of different approaches. Grants are very high on our list, and it seems like every other day something's coming across the desk for here's a new grant application, can we go pursue it? We actually just submitted one to purchase electric vehicles for downtown and for Florence Villa to begin implementation of a micro-transit program in our downtown to help move people from parking spaces to restaurants and bars and things like that. So.
All right. Well, we are out of time for today. There are still several questions on here. This entire front row is our city leadership team. So if you've got a specific question, either get with me and I'll get you with the right person or come catch somebody this morning. Quite a few questions and suggestions about parks and pickleball and other parks and recreation things. As you go down the stairs and you leave, there's a room to your right. Our Parks and Recreation team is set up in there with our consultants to take feedback for that Parks, Recreation, and Trails master plan on your way out. So please feel free to stop in and have a conversation with them. And on behalf of the entire team, thank you again for being here today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.